We're now joined in the slave pit. It is Hunter Jackson. How are you today?
I'm doing good, except for one thing, that we're not really in the slave pit. We're actually, come here, I want to show you this. We're actually in the House of Hunter.
There we go.
And this is, House of Hunter is sort of my new sort of company thing that I'm starting up with me and some of the people that are helping me out, like Derek Smith over there, who is currently coloring on some comic stuff. But I have a lot of original slave pit junk here.
Okay,
like
great.
That Scrotamoon's costume that you were just panning over.
Well, I saw the sign on the wall, so I figured we're paying tribute to the original slave pit.
Oh yeah, that's the original slave pit sign, the "Don't Talk About It, Do It," that hung in the original slave pit and all that stuff.
Well, let's talk about that. I know all this started up in Richmond, Virginia, but is that where you grew up?
Yeah, well, I grew up kind of in the sticks to the east of Richmond, and or actually to the west of Richmond, and the slave pit started. There was like a big warehouse building, and lots of different artists. Yeah, it was it was a Richmond dairy building. It had been like this place where they were packaging dairy products like ice cream and stuff like that. So there were a lot of weird rooms like that had used to be freezers with like big crazy doors. And the place that I wanted to make a science fiction movie, so I saw this part that had a big wrought iron staircase, and there was a big hole in the floor. And I was like, oh man, I'll put the engine room down here of my spaceship, and then they can be yelling back and forth with the bridge upstairs, you know. And so we were going to build a set for this movie I wanted to make.
And that's Scumdogs of the Universe?
That was the Scumdogs of the Universe movie. And so I was renting this space, and I started making costumes and props to make the movie. But at the same time, it was all a lot, too, about, I really hated Star Wars a lot.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show people what a cool science fiction movie would be like. Like, I thought that it should be like Road Warrior in outer space, you know. And one of the things that I hated about Star Wars the most, even though it was, you know, nominated for big time awards and all that for it, is the soundtrack. I hated the music from Star Wars so bad. And I wanted this science fiction movie to have a really cool, like crazy punk rock soundtrack, you know. Mm-hmm. And a lot of bands were practicing in the building and stuff.
So it was this multi-mix use. There was rehearsal, there was art, there was
sculpture
theater
students,
and all that.
There were all kinds of stuff going on. And in the basement, the whole place was run by this guy that was doing a T-shirt. He was printing T-shirts and stuff.
Okay.
So he was the landlord. And there were lots of bands and stuff, so I would get in touch with different people to do music and stuff. And at the time, Dave Brocky was doing his band Death Piggy, which had a lot of crazy theatrical stuff in it. Like he used to make these crazy paper mache dummies and like say, oh, this is my Uncle Nobby, you know, and then he would like abuse the guy for the whole show and stuff like that. And so there were a few times that we did, I did special effects with Death Piggy as well. In fact, the first time that we ever did a spewing dick was in a Death Piggy show where Death Piggy was warming up for Wendy O. Williams.
Okay.
And she had just been in Playboy, right? And so we thought it would be funny if, since we were...
Was this with the Plasmatics or she was solo?
No, this was after she had split from the Plasmatics. Okay. Oh man, she was doing this killer show. It was so good, man. She was in really awesome shape. And she was wearing this like... black leather bikini that looked like a horse harness, and oh man, she was so hot. I was right there on the front row reaching my arms up, and she was teasing me, you know, holding her tits like 2 inches from my fingertips, you know. It was really an awesome show. But anyway, Death Piggy was going to warm up for her, and she had just been in Playboy, so we thought it would be funny if Dave like opened up the Playboy thing and acted like he was jerking off. And so I had this Spudic that I had made for this robot costume anyway. So we took this, it was made from like a ketchup bottle like would be at a diner. Yeah. And then it was attached to something that looked like sort of a piece of a vacuum cleaner hose. So it was kind of ribbed, and it had this really cool jerk-off action. And then you just would unscrew the top, unscrew the head, and fill it up with some kind of glop, you know, and it was good for 1 or 2 good squirts, you know. But the thing was, the audience, as soon as the audience saw it, they knew what was going to happen, and the audience just sort of split like the Red Sea, and the stuff just squirted out on the floor and all. But that was the first time we ever did a spew dick.
That's
so
crazy.
I'd been working with Death Piggy a little bit, doing funny theatrical stuff and all. And so one of the things that Death Piggy used to do a lot was Dave used to work with different people in the dairy building and make up these, you know, different silly bands that would have like 1 song or something like that, or 2 songs. And then he would warm up for Death Piggy by having these other goofy bands come out and sing 1 or 2 songs, and then, you know, go backstage and then take off whatever silly costume they had. So we thought it would be really funny if they used the GWAR costumes, and I would just show up with a big bag full of all the stuff, and then they would pick it up and put it all on and stuff, and we would just do these crazy
So these
shows
were just the costumes you were making for the movie?
For the movie. And the movie also had a scene in it where one of the characters in the movie, and it had a lot of similarities to the story of GWAR. It was a lot about characters who had been marooned on the earth, and TECHNO Destructo was sort of like coming to Earth to get them and take them back into outer space to conquer the universe. So that part of the story was the same kind of, you know, and it had a lot of similar characters like Cardinal Sin, the Holy Warrior from outer space that's like this giant robot guy, you know, and stuff like that. So it had a lot of similarities to GWAR. And it sort of evolved into GWAR, you know, and sort of what sort of ended up happening was Dave's crazy theatrical show, you know, sort of had a head-on collision with my movie idea, and we started doing GWAR, you know, and
So you got a bigger response to that than Death Piggy.
Right, and the crowds would start to leave. Like after people would come to see what kind of weird thing we were doing with GWAR, and then they would leave, you know. And like there would be a big buzz about, oh, what are they going to do with GWAR this time, and all stuff like that. And we were experimenting with spew effects and stuff like that, and the show was definitely way cruder than it is now, as far as the techniques and the way, you know, we learned as we grew, and you know, I'm still learning and growing now.
Yeah.
I just built this super awesome like Bigfoot guy here, and this is
life size, and a person actually gets in there.
Yeah, this is a person gets in here, and it's built so that you can get in the wrestling ring and duke it out.
Full limber, all motion.
Full mobility. It's made so you can breathe good and you can see good. You know?
Amazing. I got to ask before we go any further, growing up, who were some of the movies or influences, who was some of the stuff that shaped your mind to even want to create Scumdog's Universe, and which ended up in the GWAR?
Well, I was always, I sort of grew up, my dad was the warden of this big prison, right? Okay. So we grew up in this little house that was surrounded by this big, huge prison. And I had 3 sisters, so I was kind of isolated from other kids. There weren't any other kids around for me to play with and stuff. Ooh. So I was like always in front of the TV watching cartoons, like watching Space Ghost and the Herculoids and Johnny Quest and all the Alex Toth cartoons and stuff. And I also read tons of comic books, and like I was super into the Fantastic Four and all of that kind of stuff. And also I would see stuff on TV, and I would try to build my toys. I would try to change my toys into some of the stuff that I would see on TV. So I grew up like building and altering my toys all the time. And that sort of developed into a hobby of just building weird costumes and weapons and, you know, props and costumes and stuff like that. And I started doing animated films with G.I. Joes and stuff like that. And then I went to went to like art school and stuff, and I ended up going into commercial art, but they never really did anything but tell me not to do what I do and tell me that there's not a market out there for.
So they were trying to make it more commercialized, more
Right.
straight.
You know, and my response to that is, fuck you. You know, I know that I'm not the only person in the world. I don't consider myself a unique person. I know that there are tons of people out there that are into the same crazy stuff that I'm into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in fact, every single person is genetically, you know, bred to crave sex and violence. I mean, and that's why we're still here, because we killed and ate animals, and we had sex with each other to make more of us. And that's why we took over the planet, you know, compared to other creatures. So we have these things in us, and we can't get rid of them, no matter how much we try to pretend like we're civilized and cultured and stuff, and how our society grows in order for us to be able to get along with each other without killing and eating each other.
So now, before you launched to make this movie, Scumdogs, had you made any like short films, or was there any?
When I was in college and stuff, I emphasized on animation and stuff, but that's where the filmmaking bug first bit me. And after I got out of college, this weird thing happened where I lost my whole portfolio of movies. So I sort of had to start over from scratch. I mean, I lost my whole college portfolio, and I'm supposed to use that to get a job, right? So I walk into places and go, oh, I know how to do animation and stuff. And they're like, well, oh yeah, well, show us some of the stuff you did. And I would be like, I kind of lost it, you know. You can't do that. So, you know, I had to build a new portfolio of stuff. And that's kind of why I started renting the space in the slave pit, was to try to build up a new portfolio of work so I could try to get some kind of job and prove that, yes, I do really know how to make movies and crap like that. But me and Chuck Varga, who was this executioner, had worked on this movie one summer called Captain Communist and the Ultimate Doomsday Device. And that was a movie it was a lot like Terminator. And it was really funny because we worked on it just before Terminator came out. Mm-hmm. And then when Terminator came out, they were like, oh man, Hunter, you should have seen it. They totally ripped off your idea about the unstoppable robot dude, man. And there's even a scene in Captain Communist where a guy tries to hit Captain Communist in the head with a pipe, you know, and it doesn't work. And we did all kinds of silly effects in it, like had cars run over people and different effects like that. Mm-hmm. There was things like people would shoot bows and arrows at Captain Communist, and he would catch the arrows and throw them back and kill the person, and all kinds of different silly stuff like that. But we had so much fun doing it that's when the movie making bug really hit me, and I was like, man, and then I saw Star Wars, and I was super pissed because, I mean, over the years, like, I like the last Star Wars movie, and I'm sure I'll like the new one that's about to come out. But the first one, when I saw the first Star Wars movie, I was really pissed. I was white knuckle pissed because I felt like Darth Vader was a cheap ripoff of Dr. Doom, who was Jack Kirby's creation, you know. And Jack Kirby's greatest work was this thing called The New Gods, where he talks about this all-encompassing power that holds the universe together, and it's called the Source, you know. So then as soon as Star Wars comes out and there's this thing called the Force, you know, I was like, come on, dude, you know. So I was kind of pissed. And there were so I felt like Star Wars was sort of like a ripoff of a lot of my favorite stuff, mm-hmm. you know, and I was kind of mad.
Wasn't that original?
Yeah, and I was kind of mad. Plus, I felt like it was real kiddified. You know, even though in the later ones they did a lot of cool stuff, you know, and I really liked the last Star Wars movie a lot. The one where Darth Vader finally, you know, turns into a Doctor Doom, you know. I thought that was really cool. Even though, yeah, it's still a Doctor Doom ripoff, but, you know. Okay.
Well, let's bring this back to the beginning again. So, the GWAR band, the opener, is bigger than Death Piggy. Was it just a constant evolution from there, or do you guys just draw a line in the sand and it's just all GWAR? Or, I mean, how did that evolve? How slowly or how fast did it really become a musical band and, you know, what we know today?
Well, what ended up happening was Death Piggy sort of started to fall apart, and this other band called the Alternatives was actually, I feel like, kind of deserved more of the credit of being the first GWAR, because they're the ones that really practiced, wrote the music, you know, and stuff like that. So there were a lot of revolving door of musicians along the way, you know, and that's one thing I feel kind of bad about, because I feel like a lot of the guys that really paid their dues to get to where they are now are sort of getting slighted, and that kind of pisses me off, but we probably shouldn't go into all that stuff. But the bottom line is, man, there were a lot of people who put their blood, sweat, and tears into GWAR, you know, pissed off their bosses, you know, got pissed off their girlfriends, you know, got in trouble with their families, you know, because they believed in GWAR and thought that it was going to go somewhere and that they would be part of it, you know. And there are a lot of people that contributed a lot on the way, you know. I can't.
Sure. Well, it looks like an ongoing evolution of people, you know. But in the beginning, Dave had some crazy ideas, but he was more the musical guy, and you were more of the costume prop guy.